There is magic in this world, if you have the eyes to see it. You don't have to go on an expedition into the lost heart of the jungle. You don't have to take tea with the fairies in their court. It's here, right now. It's just hard to notice, but you could see it once. It was there in the tree in your backyard, the video game you get lost in for hours, the fear you felt at the shadows in the back of your closet at night. The world was bigger back then and more willing to play along. It defied reality to be what you saw in it. That tree really did scrape the clouds. You really were the hero in that game. The monsters really did want to come out and gobble you up. Perhaps that's all changed now. Perhaps you've forgotten how to see it. Maybe it's gone away. But the magic? It's still there. If you look carefully, you could find it again. And in a way few other pieces of fiction I've seen could manage, the movie My Neighbor Totoro helps. There's no way to watch this film and come away unaffected. If only for a moment, the clouds will lift from your eyes, the world will seem so much wider and so much more wonderful. It's an incredible thing to be able to do for your audience, and I think we could learn how to do it in our own writing too. A big thanks to Campfire writing and world-building software for making this video possible. Plan, write, repeat. Studio Ghibli films are incredibly special to me. I've slowly been picking my way through them for years, giving myself the time to savor each unique experience they have to offer. Watching one of these is like a holiday to me. It can fill me with enough joy and wonder to last the entire year. But somehow, I've not been particularly eager to watch My Neighbor Totoro. It always seemed like it would break Ghibli's tradition of leaving interpretation up to the audience. Seeing images of the fantastical creatures and the children laughing and just being super saccharine and adorable, I guess I thought it would pander the way any self-proclaimed kids movie does. I could not possibly have been more wrong. Make no mistake, Totoro is a cute movie. Exceptionally cute. The Totoros, the Soot Gremlins, the Cat Bus, Mei and Satsuki all full of energy and life and joy. These are the things that draw us to the movie. This is what we mistake as the source of the film's magic. But the majority of the film's runtime is also very grounded, full of carefully detailed, realistic, relatable moments. When they move into their new home, which appears so much larger on the inside, and the sisters become a whirlwind of excitement, running around exploring it. When a typhoon rattles the house, and the family has to find ways to comfort each other. When Mei shows up in the middle of Satsuki's school day because she's sad and lonely and having a hard time coping with the fact that their mother is in the hospital. It's surprising to see this much realism in a children's fantasy movie. But that's what makes it so special. The fantasy isn't some weird occurrence. It's not just a spectacle. It's part of their lives. The fact that there should be a family of Totoros living in the woods, or an army of soot gremlins in their home, or a cat bus flying through the sky is no more an exaggeration of a child's world than the impossible scale of their new home as they explore it, or the overwhelming weight of their mother's stay in the hospital. Whether or not Totoro is real isn't important. He affects them. He is a child's hope in a dark place. And that is a sort of magic. But I've been throwing around the word magic a lot, haven't I? So far it just sounds like I'm talking about magical realism. Tie some meaningful fantasy to your world, and everything seems a little more enchanting. Really, it's kind of the opposite of that. In a talk he gave to his 6th grade class, Miyazaki tried to explain different perspectives and all the room for creativity they provide. What does the world look like through different eyes? Birds are so in tune with the wind. Can they see it? Does it look and feel to them the way that the road feels under your feet? What about bumblebees? They move so fast and raindrops must be so large. For them, it must be a bit like looking at water floating around blob-like in zero gravity. Maybe they can even dodge raindrops that way. And fish? well, they must have no concept of being underwater. To them, we're just in the air. The world truly seems to change depending on how you look at it. Sure, maybe a raindrop is always roughly the same size, but the experience of it is so vastly different from one point of view to the next. If you were to see it from a bumblebee's perspective for the first time, it would look like a fantasy world to you. And if we can capture that difference in perspective, what it means, what it feels like, we can change the world. An act of magic. A child's world isn't going to be quite as alien to us as a bumblebee's, but there's still enough difference in scale, in understanding, for that magic to occur. This is why Totoro and the other magical creatures make so much sense beside the rest of the more grounded material in the movie. Although it tries to show us the world through Mei and Satsuki's eyes, we're past the point of being truly awed by a rotten piece of wood or some random acorns. To the girls, this stuff is exciting and fun and new, but we need the other part of their world too. The reality that there could be little creatures moving in the shadows, big furry goblins in the woods, cat buses riding on the wind. We need those things to clear the clouds of common sense from our eyes and see the way they do. When he was planning the movie, Miyazaki said he wanted to create a film about what we have forgotten, what we don't notice, what we are convinced we have lost, believing that we still have these things. And he did. If only for a moment, My Neighbor Totoro helps us to see the world as a child might. That is the magic of this movie. But not just this movie. This can work virtually anywhere. Miyazaki calls this technique a moving perspective, which he compares to a plastic model perspective. As an animator, he's spent years trying to figure out the best ways to convey experiences. When it came to mechs and vehicles, he'd find himself holding a plastic model in front of his face and moving it past his eyes to get a sense of scale, spatial depth, closeness. But it always sort of fell short. It felt like a symbol for the experience he wanted the audience to have rather than the experience itself. He also feels this way about a lot of rote animation techniques like standardized walk cycles and scrolling parallax backgrounds. But when you actually get into a vehicle and experience the world in motion, that's a new perspective. The world as you perceive it changes. You can try to imagine what it might look like from up high or whizzing by at 80 miles per hour, but until you've seen it for yourself, it will be hard to actualize. And not because you can't do it accurately, although that is a factor, but it's hard to know how it feels. For us writers, this sounds a lot like an extreme version of write what you know, as if you can't write anything you've never experienced. Experience certainly helps, but I think what Miyazaki is getting at is that we can do better than just accurately representing the material. We can try to dig a little deeper and find how the changed perspective affects the world's feel, what the difference means to those experiencing it, and then let that inform how we convey it. Sometimes this can even make things less rational. The trees flying by at 80 miles per hour aren't actually a blurred ribbon of green and gray, but for that brief span of time, it's what they become. Yes, things might be quite a lot bigger through the eyes of a bumblebee, but what is it like to have enough time to avoid the rain as it falls? There must be a special leisure within that world. Time must seem to move so much more slowly, so much more comfortably. I can almost imagine bumblebees sitting on flower petal couches, chatting about their day and sipping on nectar. Yes, the wind must feel as familiar to a bird as the ground does under your feet, but what would it be like to walk along it? I bet the air would seem as though it were filled with pathways, highways, roads, hidden thoroughfares. Birds must feel like trailblazers all the time. Yes, fish must not think of being underwater at all. So what creatures might lurk up there in the deep, bright air? We must be as mysterious to them as they are to us. And yes, Satsuki and Mei are children. Their world must be larger and stranger and more exciting. Common sense hasn't yet clouded their vision. There may yet be a Totoro in the trees. In their world, that's not a fantasy at all. But, of course, animals and children will see the world a little differently. I think that's a given. The kicker here is that this works for pretty much any perspective. A nurse sees the world differently from a butcher, a mother sees it differently from someone childless, a lonely robot in an old foundry sees it differently from someone watching a YouTube video. By trying to acquire a moving perspective of the world you're writing, whether it belongs to a bee or a bird or a fish or a child or anything else you can think of, you can create experiences that are more than accurate, that change the world, that make us feel the change rather than just see it. All you need is a good imagination and a willingness to look past the concrete. Let things be a little weird if it's a more honest perspective. Let there be Totoros in the trees. Do that, and you've found your magic again. If you want to experiment with this, it's going to require a lot of intuition, but a lot of world building as well. And it's really easy for things to get lost in the shuffle as you go. So, to make things just a touch easier on you, I'd recommend using Campfire Blaze. Campfire Blaze is a browser-based suite of tools to help you keep your writing organized, collaborate with friends in real time, or work by yourself to flesh out every facet of your story. Develop your manuscript in Blaze's word processor, create characters, design your plot, and world build to your heart's content. Once you're done, sharing your story with friends and fans is super easy. You can also expand Blaze's free version by purchasing the tools you need, and then keep those tools forever. Or build your own subscription so you're only paying for the features you need. Add features for as little as 50 cents a piece, or unlock everything for a few dollars per month. And if you're on the fence, no risk. There's a 30-day return policy. Follow the link in the description to learn more. Write better stories faster with Campfire Blaze. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a quick thanks to all the helpful humans who support the show on Patreon. All those words you see scrolling in the background of these videos? Those are actually the names of our Patreon maintenance crew, without whom this show would not be possible. And a special word to all of our top patrons, Lord Gate, RPG Grenade, and the Autumn Rider. Thank you so much. And that's it for this video. There's usually a few weeks between uploads, so if you want more Tale Foundry in the meantime, come join our community. We have a Discord server that's basically like a big family of creatives, a lot of love there, and we also run writing groups on Twitch every week if you want to get some practice in. You can find links to all of it in the description. Hope to see you there. Until then, thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next time. Bye!